Ave cohort, we are back from our little break. Going to be doing some mission editing here and talking about AI taskings, why they're important, what they mean, and how that correlates into your mission. We're going to be building a fresh mission here today, kind of a classic small scenario involving a strike against a runway. And we're going to want some additional aircraft up there to protect us, understandably. But it should be a good time and should have some minimal trigger work, but we're going to go through all of that just like we did last week. And let's go ahead and get started here. Go ahead and pull up the game and unmute from the room. There we go. All right, Mander, I should have my actual stream locally in the channel here up.
Yep, I got you up.
Excellent. And who's going to be building along with us here as we do this one. Just leave a little note there. We're doing some mission edited work, so if you do have questions of any kind, feel free to go ahead and drop those in chat, and I will answer them here as quickly as I am able to. Just go ahead and turn that off on the stream so we don't see those popping up. All right, so for today's mission editor background, I'll go ahead and put up the Magnificent 8, MI8. Get that kind of music going along. Let's delve right into it. Make a new mission. And then we're going to go ahead and put this one on Caucasus. Nice, simple. It's a mission everybody has if they've got DCS. Or a map, rather, if everybody's got DCS. And we're just going to go ahead and leave the configuration for the countries as their default. Let's go ahead and load up. Take it just a few minutes here while it loads all the map stuff. Hello, Frost. Welcome to the stream. All right. So we've got our little spot here for the Caucasus. And what we're going to be doing today is using Gudata here as our main base. So the first thing we're going to do is click on that, flip that over to blue. Just so that way we've got this as our main spot where we're taking off. And we'll plop down our fighter for ourselves. Let's go ahead and use a Vigan here for today. And we're going to make sure that we're on the client for the skill type. And take off from ramp. And we went over here to our objects. We added an airplane group. Made sure it's on our side. Gave it a name. Selected the type of aircraft. Made sure it's a client slot so that way we can slip right into it. Yeah, doing a little bit of teaching there, Frost. And we're here on the base. Take off from ramp so that we're actually on the ground. And we will come back to that here in just a couple of minutes.
Where was that take off from? Okay.
Yep. The options there, just running through them from top to bottom. Turning point, the aircraft is in the air and it's just a steering waypoint. Flyover point, kind of the same thing. It's just another waypoint to go to. Takeoff from runway will actually put your aircraft all started up, ready to roll, on the runway, ready to take off. Like literally you just push the throttle forward, you're ready to go. Takeoff from ramp starts at cold and dark, and it starts you on the apron or in the hangar, depending upon what airbase you got. Takeoff from parking hot starts you in that position, but the jet's warmed up, ready to go, turned on, that kind of thing. Landing is, you want to land at this installation. If you've got waypoints that are associated with it, just like you do with the Vigan, it will encode those for you on the data cartridge. And then takeoff from ground is like takeoff from ramp, but it's not attached to a parking spot. So you can kind of place that anywhere, which is potentially important for the Viggen. You're not going to see that with all aircraft, because not every aircraft can take off from, a field. Just go and snooze that. Add there for another 5 minutes for folks. And then the last option, takeoff from ground hot, is just like takeoff from ground, but the jet is started up and ready to go. But the first thing we're going to do is pick a target area and put some things on it. And kind of want to make this one a little quick for our flight time. So rather than like cruising out here like 140 miles or so, we're going to go with Maycop as our target. Maycop, Kanskaya. Let's flip that over to red. And we're going to go ahead and build some units in here. And we're going to select ground units here first, because I like putting up some little bits of air defense and some tanks and things for us to blow up, that kind of deal. But don't worry, because we're talking about AI taskings and why they're important and the things DCS doesn't tell you about. So we're going to have more than our own aircraft going up, and we're going to take care of those here in a minute. But first we need to give ourselves a target to shoot at. You want to change your side over to whatever filter you like. Your best bets are either going to be Combined Joint Task Forces Red, which will give you everything on the OP4 side, or you can go with something like Russia if you want to filter it a little bit for the technology. I should go ahead and use Combined Joint Forces Red. And I'm going to actually select Air Defense. And we'll keep it a little easy here today, but do want something that's got a little more complexity to it than some of the stuff that we built. Let's go ahead and scroll on down here. So we're looking at Combined Joint Task Forces is the country.
Oh, it wasn't a ground vehicle? What are we?
Yeah, it's under ground vehicle. Click on the tank for ground units on the left. As I catch my own mic for the sneeze there.
Why it wasn't showing up?
There you go. So we're going to go under Air Defense. And we're going to scroll down to SAM SA2. It's actually the SA235 P19 Flat Face SR. Now, for you playing at home, that kind of thing, this is a search radar known as Flat Face. And it is the search radar that is associated with the SA2, the SA3, and the SA5 sites. The SA5 has a couple that it can use, but you can use the Flat Face and it will work as intended. So now we're going to go ahead and add a unit, and we do that up here at the top, above where it says category for air defense. And we're just going to tick that side where it says 1 of 1. One on the right there, we're just going to tick that out one space. And we're going to put in an SA3, S125, low blow TR, which is a track radar. Most of the NATO RWRs will show up as an FF for flat face. That is a correct statement. So now that we got our search radar and our track radar, we need to give it some launchers. So we're going to tick out one more time. So we're at unit 3 of 3, and we're going to select SAM SA3 S125 GOA LN, which is the launcher. And we're just going to put in, a little 3-shot SA3 sight. And you can kind of grab it and drag them around there a little bit so they're kind of make sense as far as how they're deployed. And I'm going to go ahead and make just group name SAM Defenders. Just so that way makes more sense for me to find it, in the mission editor.
What was the third one? I'm sorry.
The third one is the SAM SA3 S125 GOA LN for the launcher. Because, we got a search radar, we got a track radar, kind of need missiles to shoot at that point too. Well, kind of teaching everybody the ropes, but Mander's actually in the room building along with as we do this.
I didn't see what 4 and 5.
They're the same thing, just extra launchers.
Oh, okay.
Depending upon the SAM site, you can go out and look it up and see what a usual group consists of if you're looking to build something purely historical. But for most of my SAM sites like SA3s, I tend to go with 3 to 4 launchers, which gives it between 12 and 16 missiles available to the site before it has to rearm. The SA2s, I might do 7 or 8 missiles, which, because they're single rail launchers, gives them 7 or 8 missiles at the site. It really kind of depends on what you're trying to build. But the understanding to have here, from a mission developer standpoint, is once that track radar disappears, it doesn't matter how many missiles are associated with the site, that site is effectively dead. Without the track radar, it can't guide the missiles to the target, so it doesn't matter how many launchers it has, they can't shoot you with it. Next thing we're going to do is just put down some tanks, some other armored vehicles. We're just going to select our ground vehicle token again, put it out here about midfield in the runway. Change the type over to armor, and let's go with some MBT T-55 main battle tanks. Small, not too much to them. Put down however many you like. I'm going to put down like 8. Couple important things to do here when you're manipulating a whole group at once. You'll notice on these groups, one of the units has a little 1 tick next to it. That is the leader of the group. If you grab the leader, you just left click and drag them around, you'll drag the whole group. But if you hold down left control and grab the leader, you can manipulate just the leader without maneuvering the whole group. Why is that important? Well, let's pretend I've got these guys kind of spread out in a formation that I like. I'm just kind of randomly dragging these guys around in a small little group, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I want this guy over here to be over here. So I'm just gonna... What's up?
Every time I try and grab it, it puts down a waypoint.
Make sure you're in edit instead of add. If you're in add mode on the right, it will just add waypoints every time you click. Yeah, without holding left control, if you grab the leader and move them over here, you're going to drag everything associated with that group in that formation. So you want to move just the leader, left click and drag them around. Let me know when you got your little bit of tanks down there on the ground. All right, perfect. All right, so now let's go ahead and add some AI units to help us out, and we'll talk a little bit about their taskings. I'm going to go ahead and select the fighters and make sure that I'm set for USA on the side. And I'm going to put this guy down here kind of on the apron. And I'm actually going to change his type to an F-16 CM BL-50, which is the Block 50 F-16C. It's the player aircraft F-16C. And we're going to have him take off from ramp as well. I'm going to give him a group name. We'll call him Seed Flight. So now what's important is his tasking, which is one of the main things that I wanted to talk about in today's lesson with DCS Mission Editor and you. You can tell I got a little bit to say because I just took a sip of coffee. So we're going to come up here to the tasking, and you've got all of these different taskings available to you. Each one of these governs what generic AI the aircraft is going to get, which can include things, snooze the ads again, which can include things like what targets are they going to prioritize? How are they going to behave? You know, what kinds of things are you going to be able to manipulate and assign him waypoints to perform? Because that all matters. If I set him up on cap and I want him to shoot SAM sites, he is going to prioritize killing other aircraft over all other tasks, rather than the SAM site that I want him to get rid of. So we're going to change his tasking to SEED, which is suppression of enemy air defenses. That's step 1. That's what we're going to work with on this guy. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and give him a loadout, and we can do that, you remember from last week, clicking on the payload option, which is this orange tab. Just going to take a moment as it pulls up the aircraft. And we can select a skin there for him. I'm actually going to go with... where are they at here? Phosphocaros. From our neighbors out there in Arizona. And his wings are empty, which is not very helpful for us doing the SEED mission, so we got to put some weapons on the jet. So on pylon 1 and 9, I'm going to put a couple of AMRAAMs on, AIM-120Cs. Next inner pylons 2 and 8, some AIM-9Xs on. Our F-16's got some teeth to defend itself with if it needs to. Stations 3 and 7, we've got other options that we can put on there, but I think what we're going to go ahead and go with is CBU 105s. And I'm going to use... yeah, it's a brew rack, that's right. CBU 105 on the brew 57, so we get 2 bombs on that pylon. And we'll mirror that loadout on the other side. Stations 4 and 6, we're going to go to air-to-ground missiles and give it the AGM-88 HARM, which is a high-speed anti-radiation missile. Realistically, that should be more than enough to kill a single SA-3 site, and even the AI can pull off that task. But we're also going to go ahead and give him a fuel tank on the bottom side there, in Station 5. And we also have 5L and 5R on this particular jet. We're going to put the HARM targeting system on 5L, and a lightning pod there on 5R. Much meaner looking aircraft now. Ready to go out there and suppress the SAMs. Okay, well, the next thing we have to do is actually give him waypoints to go somewhere so he can get close enough to kill the site. Zoom out just a little bit, and we're going to add a couple of waypoints. The first waypoint I like to add is usually a little ways off. And then what we're going to do is come down here to Advanced Waypoint Actions. And you can let me know if I'm going too quick here.
I'm still trying to figure out the loadout here.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Have you gotten some of the pylons on?
I've got most of them, but I missed a few. I didn't get 6 and 4.
Put under air-to-ground missiles, AGM-88 HARM.
Okay, what was 1 and 9?
AIM-120C AMRAAMs.
And I didn't quite catch how you got that second bomb on 3 and 7.
It is just a different option. It's up towards the top. It's the BRU-57, which is the type of pylon those bombs are sitting on, with 2X CBU-105. It's like the 5th option down from the top on that pylon.
Okay.
All right, this ad I'm not going to be able to stop, so for those of you who have to watch the ad break, we'll catch you back here after that is done. We're just going to go ahead and continue onwards. And for those of you who are watching it on YouTube later, you can just watch it. It's a good time. All right, so you got the jet configured. It's got stuff on it. All right, so we're going to put out our waypoint, kind of southwest of the target area here. And if you notice down here under the advanced waypoint actions, it's already populated with something here. It says seed -a -ref. The AI, when you give them a tasking, will have what's called an en route task that governs what the aircraft does while it's traveling. Not every aircraft has an en route task, but the most common types that you'll notice are CAP, CAS, and SEED. Those three taskings basically tell the aircraft, hey, anything in this type of target set that you detect, go out and engage it. That is not always helpful, as if you've got aircraft that are supposed to be maintaining a specific station for CAP, you don't want them flying all over the map hunting down every radar detection that it can find. You know, you kind of want them to be in a specific zone. Well, you still want them to have the CAP tasking, but what you'll need to do is delete this en route task and change it to a different sort of task to search and engage within a zone. And then they will only care about whatever the circle is that you put down as far as its range and everything else. SEED kind of works the same way. If you want these aircraft to only be concerned about SAM sites in a specific area, you'll want to delete the SEED tasking and change it over to search, then engage in zone. Because then you can actually pick out what SAMs you want it to kill. You know, maybe you've got some aircraft that are going up and they've got perfect weapons for dealing with anti-aircraft artillery. You can prioritize having them go after those rather than, you know, radar-guided missiles. And then you have short, medium, and long-range SAMs. Then your attack options there for it. The one we're actually going to use today is just the standard SEED tasking, as it is a lot less important. You know, the more complex the mission is and the more specific you have targets are, that is going to be where you really want to narrow down who's doing what and where. But for our purposes, this tasking will be sufficient. What we are going to do, though, is add an advanced waypoint action to waypoint 1 for this aircraft, and we're going to tell it to attack a group. And it's going to be our SAM Defenders group. And we can leave the rest in there, but we will talk about it real quick as far as what the rest of these options mean and how they affect the AI. You can tell it specifically what weapon to engage it with. Unguided munitions, cannons, rockets, light rockets, heavy rockets, iron bombs, cluster bombs, candle bombs, anti-ship missiles, ATGMs, anti-tank guided missiles rather, standard anti-ship missile or air-to-surface missiles, anti-radiation missiles, decoys. So you can really fine-tune what the AI is doing to attack it. So if you've got, you know, a flight of aircraft, for example, that are carrying a bunch of decoys, you could instruct them specifically to throw their decoys at a certain target, and they will do it. We're just going to leave it in auto, so we'll let the aircraft decide what weapon it's going to fight the site with. But the release quantity you can control if you're not using auto for the weapons, as far as how many weapons are going to be fired, and that is a group total. So if you have it set for like 8 weapon releases, then if you've got 4 aircraft up and they got 2 missiles each, they will each fire 2 missiles to meet that total, for example. Group attack, generally speaking, if you've got a flight of aircraft, they will attack singly. So you'll have one guy shoot their weapons, and then he'll move away, and then the next guy will come in and shoot their weapons, and then they'll move away, and so on and so forth down the line until everybody's had a chance to shoot or the target's dead. But sometimes you want to overwhelm a site, especially for SAMs. So group attack will tell the AI, hey, I want everybody in the group to engage this target at about the same time. So then they will all get close to the target area, they'll get within parameters, and they should all shoot right about the same time as one another. Direction from, it doesn't give you an actual specific compass heading, but you can kind of use this compass rose to point what direction do you want them to attack from. You know, for example, if you want them to attack down the runway, you'd use the runway's heading as best as you can aim it. If they're in a valley somewhere and there's a very narrow window, and attacking east to west is far better than attacking north to south, then you'll want to change that accordingly. And an altitude above is kind of self-explanatory. I want you to attack this SAM site from above a specified altitude. But we're going to go ahead and just leave most of these as default options so that they will attack the group called SAM Defenders. The other thing that I want to do is make sure that this poor F-16 is not fighting down in the mud to attack the SAM site with harms. So we're going to go ahead and set his altitude to 22,000 feet. If you're not using Imperial units, you can use somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5,500 meters. And we'll go and we'll set his speed to 0.7 Mach. So here's another thing that they don't really tell you about on the tin, but is kind of important for the mission editor, especially if you're building your own missions. This speed that it shows you here is not the indicated airspeed at altitude. It's the ground speed. For some of you, that made a light bulb go off in your head, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I understand it. For others, you're probably staring at the screen going, what the hell's the difference, Pylum? And that's okay, because I'm going to help you out there. Airspeed changes with air density. The higher up you go, the slower you will have your indicated airspeed be, but the faster you'll be moving relative to the ground, which is your ground speed. To provide you an example there with all of that one. Oh, no, you're absolutely right, Frost. It probably should specify it, but it doesn't. It only gives you ground speed. But to give you an example, most of the time when I'm setting my tankers up, I usually have them somewhere between 19,500 feet and 22,000 feet for their orbits. And I usually have them set for somewhere between 0.65 and 0.7 Mach. And what that comes out to is it'll say somewhere in the neighborhood of 430 knots is how fast they're going. The actual airspeed that they're traveling, the indicated airspeed at that altitude, is about 300 to 320 knots, which is about where I want the tanker speed to be comfortable, to be able to hook up to the tanker and get your gas and do what you need to do. But we are dealing with technology that is 20 years behind the power curve, as this mission editor is largely the same as it has been since Flanker. So unfortunately they use ground speed. That's what you're working with, and since wishes won't make a thing so, we kind of just have to adapt and go from there. But anyway, back to what we're doing here with the AI and how they're working. This guy now is going to take off from Gudada. He's going to start his jet up as quick as he can, taxi out, take off, fly to this waypoint, turn in, and engage the target. One of the other things that they really kind of don't tell you about too much is the AI does not start doing what you told them to do for the advanced waypoint options until they reach the waypoint. There are some things that they do en route to the next waypoint. For example, if the altitude and the airspeed are different, they will immediately correct themselves to the new altitude and fly at whatever the new airspeed is, however long it takes them to make those adjustments. But for something like, I want you to attack Y target at X time, when you get to this waypoint, they will not actually execute the attack order until they arrive at the waypoint. So if you're wanting them to attack a target and be ready for it and that kind of deal, you kind of want to make sure that whatever waypoint you put down for them to go out and actually perform the attack action is a little further away from your target. That way they can turn, they can line up, they can do what they need to do to be able to help that attack. The last thing we want to do for this F-16 driver is let him come home. So we're going to make another waypoint for him. We're going to click Add, and click right here on the runway. We're going to give it a landing waypoint. And we'll talk a little bit briefly about what it's telling you here in this box here on the right, because it is a landing type waypoint, which will automatically change his altitude and airspeed and everything else to a more appropriate number for coming into land. But over here it says PRK, auto. If you wanted, you could tell him where exactly to park, rather than taking the first available spot. I kind of want him to come right back to where he was, so we're going to tell him to park back in spot 2.
Why is it not now letting me add waypoint?
Did you select?
Oh, I'm hitting add in the wrong spot.
There you go. All right, so now we got.
Weird, because it went.
Go ahead.
It added it as the number 1 waypoint instead of the number 2.
That's okay. What you can do is just select that landing waypoint where it's bad and hit delete. And you should see everything right itself again.
Yep.
And then select the last waypoint in your series, and then click add, and then click to where you want it to go. You can add waypoints in the middle, and what it will do is just insert those in between whatever the next waypoint is and the one that you're on. So if you made like a 4 waypoint sequence to go somewhere and you're like, oh damn, I really wanted like a 5th spot for this thing to go, you can click to wherever it is you want and then just add the waypoint in the middle of it without disturbing the other points. And it will just adjust itself like it needs to.
There we go.
All right. So we got ourselves a seed aircraft. We're going to be the attacking aircraft. We probably want someone to keep us safe. So we're going to add a 3rd aircraft.
Oh, I missed how I set up this. So I got the waypoint on there, then what do I do?
No, change it to a landing waypoint type. You should see it jump to the middle of the runway there at Gudata. And then you can tell him to park wherever you like. I went ahead and I put him back in spot number 2, where he came from.
Okay.
All right, so we got our 3rd aircraft. This is going to be our cap aircraft. He'll keep us safe. Or at least he'll try to keep us safe. And sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles on that thing. And we'll go ahead and we'll make him an F-15C. Same thing as before, we're going to have him take off from ramp. We're going to give him a clever name, like Cap Aircraft. And then we're going to edit his loadout. And I think this first one here is probably fine. The AIM 120 times... Oh no, that's AIM 120 times 8. I kind of want him to have some sidewinders too. We'll just modify that one.
I have to do something because right now I've just got it as check marks. And it doesn't let me click on it.
Oh, you must have clicked payload restriction. Just go ahead and check that box again.
Oh, okay.
You can use payload restriction to turn off certain weapons on certain pylons, especially if you're looking to do something historical, and prohibit certain weapons from being used at all, which is an easier way of going about it than going through every runway and setting specific limits as far as what missiles are available and that kind of thing. I went ahead and I chose the first option there, the AIM 120 times 8, fuel times 3. And I changed pylons 3 and 9 to AIM 9M sidewinders. Went and clicked out of it and broke it, so I just got to fix it again.
Which sidewinders?
AIM 9M.
9M.
Yep. If you're not using 9Xs, 9Ms are the next most recent to use. And we're going to go ahead and give him 2 aircraft. You can put up to 4 in any given flight. Just going to come up here just like we did with the ground units and give it one extra tick. Okay, and then same thing as the F-16, we're going to go ahead and add a waypoint. We're actually going to add a couple of waypoints. And I'm going to put them kind of out here to the south. That's about right. I want them about 30 miles apart. I think I might actually move the F-16's waypoint here in a minute once you got these down. So let me know when you got those 2 waypoints down. We're also going to change their altitude here. We'll make them 25,000 feet at Mach 0.7. And we're going to do that for waypoints 2 and 3.
Okay.
And we're doing that mostly because I want those aircraft to be up high. They're going to be cap aircraft that kind of do their best work being seen and being able to see everywhere. And having a little bit of an altitude advantage over our targets is going to be helpful. And as you can see, we have the cap tasking for them. And if we look at our advanced waypoints, right now they're set on the cap tasking, which by default means these guys are going to look for any target they can find up in the sky, no matter where it is. If they can detect it with their radar and it's within 100 to 150 miles, they will push out to go try and attempt to engage it, regardless of other orders and instruction. It's kind of important to phrase it that way when you're looking at building the missions and everything else, because there are times where you don't want them to go out and attack anything willy-nilly, and that's what we're going to change here today. For this particular mission, it is a whole lot less important that we do that, because there's not going to be a whole lot that's up for them to go and worry about and have to deal with. But we're going to get into some good habits together, so that's what we're going to go ahead and change. We're going to go ahead and delete the cap tasking from the advanced waypoint, and it doesn't matter what waypoint you do it on. It could be any of the 3 of them that we placed, because an en route waypoint automatically applies that task to all of the waypoints available for the jet. So bam, it's gone. They are no longer set to go hunt down anything. And we're going to add a task, and it's going to be start en route task. And it's going to be search and engage in zone. And it goes, okay, cool. What do you want them to prioritize? This is where you can kind of specify for your fighter, what do you want it to attack? For example, a lot of the missions that I build, I really don't want the fixed-wing aircraft, like the big, fast-moving, powerful jets like MiG-29s and Su-27s and things, to go run down the helicopters because they're the ones that they see first. That's really not something those aircraft should be doing unless there's really no other targets to deal with. Their job is to engage other fighters, so I kind of want them to engage other fighters. We can uncheck helicopters and UAVs, and now this guy will not worry about helicopters or UAVs unless he is absent literally all other target types. But using the search and engage in zone, he's not even going to look for these objects. He will dismiss them out of hand so he can actually orbit overhead. And while it might be worrisome to your rotors down on the ground, especially if you use triggers later when we start doing some really advanced kind of stuff, to change their tasking to suddenly include engaging helicopters. That might be a spook for them for later. But for now, we're just going to leave it on airplanes, fighters, multi-role fighters, bombers, and interceptors. And then you can set a zone radius in feet. I'm going to go ahead and push this all the way out to 144,000 feet. You're going to give me a nice wide circle here. And I'm going to grab this triangle and put it kind of about here so that some of the circle occupies Maycop, most of the circle occupies the area outside of Maycop, and the 30-mile distance between waypoints 1 and 2 that I put down. This is the zone that this aircraft is going to look for targets to the exclusion of all others. So it's kind of a good waypoint type to use and a command type to use if you have aircraft that are taking a very specific cap station and are worried about a very specific airspace. And this kind of applies to CAS and SEED as well, because you can use the same search and engage task for those aircraft with that role, and they will look for those targets within that sphere. Now, for example, if we were doing something like a scud hunting type mission, and your job is to escort the aircraft that are actually doing the scud hunting, and you're using AI aircraft to make that happen, you could put all of your scuds, out here somewhere, wherever you want them to be, get them all nice, finely tuned and placed, and then put this waypoint down, search and engage in zone, and have that circle overlap that zone, and those aircraft will show up and start looking for those targets in that area. And when they find them, they'll roll in and try and go kill them. But if you haven't noticed it quite by now, there's one other little problem. I really don't want my cap aircraft to come up and just run this waypoint one time and then go home. That's not helpful. I want them to be there for a bit. So we're going to come back to waypoint 1, and we're going to add another advanced task. And this one is going to be perform task rather than start en route task. And it's going to be orbit. If you're using the last waypoint in a set, or if you only have one waypoint, the only orbit pattern there that's available to you is circular. If you have a waypoint and then a waypoint after it, you can use racetrack, which will give it a large oval-shaped sight pattern with just left turns, so it's very ideal for tankers and AWACS and things like that. Between whatever waypoint you put it on and whatever the next waypoint in sequence is. So one of the things that I've done, and again this is something that will come up when we do advanced trigger building and things like that, is you can actually put in there for different tanker tracks to be governed by other events. And you can do that every other waypoint and go, okay, I want a tanker station here, but when the SEED aircraft have knocked out this SAM site and it's safe for that tanker to get closer, I want it to move here and do an orbit over here. And then when that task is done, they can move to this third waypoint over here and do another orbit over there, so that way they're ready to refuel aircraft that are literally on the front line or near to the front line, instead of having just one tanker station way out in the boonies somewhere that is almost less than valuable to come out and hit. So there's a lot of things you can do with the different patterns, but for what we're doing right now, this is really all we need. We're going to have a racetrack pattern at 25,000 feet, and we're going to set his ground speed to 426 knots, which is going to be identical over here on the right to his Mach 0.7 speed at 25,000 feet. The important thing to note about the orbit task is that absent any other triggers or things that you have set for the aircraft to change what it's doing, it will orbit until it is out of gas or down to bingo where it's time to go home, and then turn and come, return to base. They'll just keep going back and forth doing whatever job they've been tasked with, which is what I want them to do. Well, we've got cap aircraft up, but the other thing that we want to change with them is their formation while they're there, because maybe I don't like the default one. So for this one, we're actually going to go back to the origin waypoint, which is waypoint 0, for this group. You can just tick the little waypoint left button there until you get to 0 of 3. And then if you look down in your advanced waypoint actions box, you should have a bunch of stuff in here.
Yep.
Now, what those things are doing is governing how this aircraft group is going to behave together. So just running down the list, top to bottom, restrict air-to-ground combat attack equals on. That tells the aircraft, hey, you're a cap fighter. Don't go diving down on a SAM site to try and kill it with your 20mm autocannon, because quite frankly, that's somebody else's job and you shouldn't be doing that. So that should be set to on. The next one down is air-to-air missile attack ranges equals random between max range and no escape zone launch. What that means is you can tell the aircraft to shoot either as soon as it thinks that it's in range, which is a very easy missile to dodge. More or less useful if you're trying to learn how to avoid missile fire like that. Because if you're firing at maximum range, really all you have to do is turn around or turn slightly sideways, or, you know, anything else, any other maneuvering other than flying straight towards your target. And there's pretty good odds that that missile's going to run out of steam long before it hits you if he fires from the furthest point out that he can. If you set it to random between max range and no escape, what it will do is it will have him launch his weapon at some random interval in between, so that it is a little more human feeling. You know, not every human player shows up on a server and then just throws 10 AMRAMs out as soon as they hit to maximum range, and then, you know, act all astonished when nothing hits. You know, some players will hold their fire and they will wait for a far more favorable position, which is what you should be doing. Getting into what's called the NEZ, or the no escape zone, for a weapon, where it is extremely difficult for a pilot to even take evasive action and avoid the weapon. Usually you're going to shoot somewhere in between those two figures, even if all you're doing is trying to put the target on the defensive, because again, the closer you get to the target, the more energy the missile has. The more energy the missile has, the harder it is to avoid. So setting it to random between max and no escape kind of gives you that feeling of a pilot trying to hold his shot for a little bit until they feel comfortable and can let that weapon go. The next one down is no report waypoint pass equals on. What that means is that, generally speaking, the AI aircraft without this option set will key their radio on whatever channel that they're set to, which in this case, if you look up at the top, the default is 124 AM. So if you're listening on 124 AM, without this option on, this aircraft is going to pass waypoint 1 and he'll key the radio and go, you know, Uzi 11 passing waypoint 1 at Angels 25, and give you that information. If that's set to no report, they're just going to fly the route and not tell you anything about it. Sometimes that's what you want, especially in a large mission with a lot of AI moving parts. You really don't need them adding to the clutter. Radio usage when contact. Again, same sort of thing. Without that option being set, the AI aircraft will go, hey, I found a target, I'm going to go engage this bandit. Hey, I found a target, it's out here. Hey, I found a target, it's over there. You know, so again, it's a lot of extra clutter, which, unless that's the point of whatever it is, mission that you're doing, better leave that as is. EPLRS on is their sensors and things, making sure that those things are active and it's not some kind of emissions control type set off. But what we want to do is add a task down here at the bottom, so it's going to be number 6, and it's going to be set option formation. Now we're going to put them in echelon right, but I don't want them to be far apart. I want them to kind of be tucked in all close together while they're moving from point A to point B. So we're going to set it to close. The only other note that I can say, hopefully before the ad starts, is that the order of these things matter. The system will try and do all of these different tasks and assignments and everything else top to bottom in order. So if you have certain things that you want to have happen for sure, before anything else interferes with them, those need to be closer at the top. The only thing that is different than that is the cap task, the seed task, the cast task. That will overwrite all other commands if it is present anywhere on the list. So we got them in formation. They're going to be fighting. They're going to be doing what they need to do. They're done. We don't have to talk or worry about them anymore. So let's go back to our own aircraft. Player aircraft have more features and things that you can tweak with them. Some of them are necessary. For example, if you wanted to make combat waypoints for the F-15, there is a specific name that you need to give to the waypoint in order for the mission editor to tell the aircraft this is an attack waypoint and pre-program all the information for you. In the case of the Vigan, one of the things that I definitely like doing it, especially having gotten in the habit a little more of it, is I will put a waypoint down here somewhere, and I'm going to give it a name. And the name I'm going to give this one is B1 Transit. And then we're going to come over here, and I'm going to put a waypoint down kind of right in the middle of the tank group that I want to kill, and I'm going to call this one M2 Attack. These are not actually going to assign these as B1 and M2 automatically in the Vigan, but what it will do is it will show on the kneeboard what the names are for the waypoint so that I can figure it out myself and make the adjustments.
Where did you add the name for it?
It is just above the type. Yep. Got about 50 seconds on the ad break there, but I'm going to wait for Amanda to catch up, and then we'll continue on with this kind of stuff. So let me know when you're caught up there.
I'm caught up. I gotcha.
Okay. And since we're going to be cool about it, I'm going to go ahead and try and follow this little river here to the south, where it starts touching on the contour lines where it looks like it's an actual valley. And we'll put a third waypoint down, and we'll call this one B3 Exfil. Kind of going to put another one down just a little further south. Remember, waypoints kind of work in straight line principles there with it, so we're actually going to be weaving on the way out. We'll name this one B4 Transit. Fire Transit.
Where was 4?
I just put 4 a little further down in the river, in the Caucasus Mountains range, kind of at the end of the little valley run. Because my thoughts on this one is, we're going to run up, we're going to bomb the base, we're going to snap back and run through this little valley, overfly this little town, pop outside the Caucasus Mountain range, and then we're going to put a waypoint out here in the water kind of behind Gudata. That a little bit. And then I'm going to put a landing waypoint on Gudata. And parking spot and back in 01. Call it a waypoint 6 lineup. And, you know, we don't have to, but we'll call waypoint 7 there RTB. Now, the only other thing that we'll say, and I'm sure, you know, whatever comment section sees this is probably going to have words for me on it, but I have not actually sat down and looked at what the waypoint specific mission editor commands are for the Vigan, but I am aware that I can get in there somewhere and set up specific attack patterns for BK-90s to be pre-programmed for the aircraft. I can set up these actual individual modes and select one of these to already start out as a combat waypoint for you. And once I do manage to sit down and read through it and figure that kind of stuff out, that's how I'm going to start building them. But for now, if I put the names in here at the very least, when I load the data cartridge and I look at the kneeboard, I can see which waypoint is going to be my attack waypoint and what I've kind of wanted to expect for the others. And the last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and just put things on the aircraft itself. Select whatever skin you like. I'm actually going to use this F7 skin in the video we saw about Boss 90 on YouTube the other night. And I'm going to put BK-90s on board the aircraft because they're fun. And since I know I'm going after tanks and nothing else, I'm going to go with the heat bomblets. And a nice big old fuel tank here in the center. And more BK-90 with heat bomblets. Good times. Okay, right, I know what you're thinking. I mentioned earlier I wanted to move the F-16 waypoint. Maybe you weren't thinking that, but I was. So I'm just going to come up here to waypoint 1 for the F-16, and I'm just going to move it a little bit closer. Because I kind of want the F-16 to get in there and take out that SA-3 site, so that way the cap aircraft can do their job. Now I know what you're really thinking here, but Pylon, there's no bad guys up in the air yet. Well, we're going to fix that. That's good to know, Chief. Alright, so let's go ahead and put some enemy aircraft up here. Let me know when you're caught up there with the Vigan waypoint. Oh, cool, cool. Just double checking. Alright, we're going to put these guys here a little ways away from Maycop. We're going to make sure they're on the Russian side. We'll call them enemy cap. And we're going to go ahead and make them Su-27s. No, not Su-27s. Not for an easy mission. We'll call them MiG-29As. Something kind of simple, probably definitely going to get killed by a pair of F-15s. But that's kind of their lot in life. It's more just the flavor and the practice of doing the mission. And we'll put them at 27,000 feet. Flying around at Mach 0.7. And we'll make it a group of 2. Actually, I'm not going to change the group size just yet. And I'll get to that in a minute. Because we got to...
27,000?
Yeah, we'll put them at 27,000. And put whatever skin you like on the jet. Let's go with standard. Standard skin's kind of nice. And I'm going to put R-73s on the outermost pylons. Nothing on 2 and 6. 27 ER on pylon 3. 27 ET on pylon 5.
What is it, 27? Is that first? It's first one under air?
Yes. R27 ER. on pylon 3 and an ET on pylon 5. And in the many times where you've gotten to listen to me talk after a flight, where I've complained about getting ET'd about one thing or another, it's this weapon that I'm being killed with. It's the R27 ET. The motor on both of those R27s and most of the missile body is the same. The seeker head is different. This one here that doesn't have just a standard kind of missile cap on it is a radar-guided weapon. And the one that has this kind of goofy-looking seeker head on the front is an infrared-guided weapon, like a giant Sidewinder for something comparable to folks watching at home. It's not as capable in terms of its actual flight performance, but it's sneaky because it doesn't tell you that it's coming. You have to kind of pay attention to it. But anyway, we've got this aircraft now. It's got a fuel tank on it and the weapons and everything. And now we're going to go ahead and tick out one time to create 2 aircraft in the flight. What that does for us is it makes the aircraft identical for whatever their loadout is. So you really only, if you've got like a bunch of aircraft that you want to all have the same loadout, you really only need to do the first aircraft like that, and then you can just click out a few times and it will copy and paste the whole loadout and everything over for you. And we're going to go under its advanced waypoints. We're going to remove the Cap A tasking. And again, in case you might have missed it earlier, you're just joining us now. The Cap A tasking overwrites all other Cap-related taskings and basically tells the jet, hey, I want you to kill anything that's Blue 4 that's flying. Anything at all. Go ham. Go absolutely bonkers and nuts with it. So we're going to go ahead and delete that and replace it with search and engage in zone. Now I really only want these fighters to engage the other fighters, so we're going to go ahead and uncheck bombers, interceptors, helicopters, and UAVs. So it's just looking for fighters, like the F-15, and multi-role fighters, like the F-16, and take them out. There's zone radius that I want them to look in. We're probably going to go with 75,000 feet. So it's a bit smaller of a zone than the 144,000 one we were using for our fighters. And we're going to put that right over the top of Maycop for its center point. So again, just looking at everything else that we're looking in the zone. This is going to tell these fighters, I want you to hunt down these aircraft if they get into this zone. If they're not in this zone, they will ignore them. They will break contact with the enemy and they will go back to wherever it was they were before. They are only going to defend this zone here in the circle and start resuming their other waypoints otherwise. But speaking of waypoints, we do need to give them a couple. So I'm just going to go ahead and put down 2 waypoints here, kind of on either end of their circle. I'm going to go back to waypoint 1 and give them their orbit tasking. And again, just going to leave the altitude the same and make sure that the airspeed is at 422 knots or Mach 0.7 for where they are. Now the other thing that I want to do for them in particular, and I tend to do this with a lot of my AI aircraft, and I'll explain why here in a minute, but I'm going to go back to the origin waypoint for our enemy fighters that we put in. I'm going to add an additional advanced waypoint option. I'm actually going to add 2. The first one I'm going to do is our formation, so it's going to be under set option, formation, echelon right, close formation. Just like we did with the F-15s. The second one I'm going to do is perform command, unlimited fuel, and it'll automatically populate it as value checked for it's on. And then I'm going to take the unlimited fuel option and move it all the way to the top of the stack. One of the frequent questions that I get with that is, Pylum, why in God's name do you want them to have unlimited gas? Well, there's a few reasons for it. The first one is, if you put enough holes in the fuel tank and they lose all their gas, they will still shut their engine off and eject and quit. They will get out of the aircraft. They will lose their airspeed. They will die. So it is possible to damage them enough that they will still run out of gas and die that way. But the reason why I tend to make the AI have unlimited gas is that the AI in DCS, fighters in particular, tend to do very stupid things with their afterburner. They tend to do very stupid things with how they rejoin formations. They burn a lot of gas just trying to get back together from whatever's happened. A lot more so than a human pilot in the same sort of conditions. So the problem that you've got with something like the MiG-29 is it doesn't have a whole lot of gas to begin with, and if they burn half their gas just trying to maintain formation with one another, and then they try and get on station where you kind of want them to go back and forth for a little while, they might only get 1 or 2 passes and then they quit and go home. The AI, from time to time, seems to have this weird notion about what base they came from, what bases are nearby, what an actual bingo state is, which is the minimum fuel level for a safe return back to whatever their base is. And then they will just leave. They will go off station, they will go home. So if I give them unlimited gas, they will actually go where I want them to go and stay there for as long as I need them to stay. And it also means that I don't have to go in and put a whole bunch of additional triggers in just to try and get them to spawn on time, if all I want them to be is an aircraft that's up on a cap station or a cap patrol. So in this case, we're going to leave them on unlimited fuel. And what they will do is just come up, they will cruise back and forth over Maycop ad infinitum until such time that somebody crosses their little circle, and then they will try and kill them. Good stuff. All right. So we have, in about an hour's worth of time with a bunch of explanations here, a very basic mission for going up to just make a BK-90 run on a base, which is kind of an ideal target. There's not a lot of hills and terrain that are around it. It's nice, big, and flat. We got some tanks in the middle that are going to blow up real nice when we look at them. We are almost done and ready to give this a test. The last things that we're going to look at are, one, placing an AWACS up, which we're going to do very quickly just by going out here to this spot here over Gudata. I'm going to change our tasking to AWACS just to filter things a little faster. If you change the tasking for whatever aircraft is up here, it will only show you aircraft that are available for that tasking. We'll make it an E3A, which is a E3 Sentry. You can give it really whatever name you want. I tend to do a lot of LOD ATC preparation, which is a separate module that you can utilize with DCS, where somebody connected to the third-party program LOD ATC can use the air traffic control system in that game, or in that module rather, to see what the AWACS sees and provide that kind of human touch experience to it rather than relying on, the AI to do it for you. But since we're not really worried about that, this is just going to be our own little single-player platform. We're just going to call this one whenever we like, which is just going to be AWACS. Very basic. You can change its call sign to whatever it is you like. It will call that one out. I like using Magic or Wizard. Sounds nice. Occasionally I like hearing Dark Star because of the way he says Dark Star on the radio. And the usual frequency that I use for most of my missions for this is 266 for the AWACS. So we're just going to go ahead and set that up as Dark Star 266 AWACS. Good stuff. Now the AWACS works best when he can see everything, so the higher up he is, the better. So we're going to put him all the way up at 30,000 feet. I'm going to set his speed to some speed that his jet definitely can't attain, which will set him to the maximum airspeed that he can fly at. And we're going to give him a couple of waypoints. If I can get my mouse to work in the direction that I need it to. That sensitivity just kind of went bonkers there for a minute. At least in the vertical. There we go. Alright, that's fixed. Alright, anyway, couple waypoints. Bippity boop, bippity boop. Waypoint 1. Put our orbit command in. We should be pretty quick at doing this now. I'm just going to go ahead and set that up for 465 knots at 30,000 feet. Nice racetrack orbit. I go back to the origin waypoint. We're actually going to use perform command option here 3 times. First for invisible, then for immortal, and for unlimited fuel. And
hang on, I'm still back on waypoint 1.
okay, no problem.
Just cruise through that one.
I did just a little bit, a lot of bit. All right, so just a couple of waypoints because we want him to have that nice racetrack pattern. So let me know when you're ready there.
What was I going? The task for waypoint 1?
Orbit. And a racetrack orbit. 30,000 feet.
It's only giving me the option for circle. Oh, hang on.
You need a second waypoint. Or at least a waypoint after the first waypoint.
I think it was because I was on waypoint 2 still.
That could be. That would do it as well.
Yeah, racetrack.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're going to go back to the origin. So waypoint 0. We're going to add 3 waypoint options there under perform command, which is invisible, immortal, and unlimited fuel. While you're setting those up, I'll talk about those real quick. Unlimited fuel, pretty self-explanatory. Don't run out of gas. Useful for tankers especially too. Any aircraft that you really kind of want up and flying for as long as the server is running or as long as the mission is running. The aircraft are big. They've got a lot of gas in them, but even they will eventually run out and have to go sit down somewhere. So if you don't want them to do that, unlimited fuel. Invisible means that the enemy AI aircraft will not see it, even if otherwise they could. That applies to the ground vehicles as well for like SAM systems. Really kind of a nicety that you can put in if you really don't want or expect anybody to kill your tankers or your AWACS or whatever aircraft it is that you're trying to protect. Sometimes though, that's what you want, and if that is what you want, don't turn that option on. Immortal takes it a step further by if something accidental happens, such as a collision, which is unlikely, but if it does happen, they won't die when it happens. Or if somebody gets frustrated and tries and guns the tanker, it won't turn into 1,000 little shards and fall out of the sky. You know, as that happens. I've certainly gunned my fair share of tankers in my time. But we also want to make sure that unlimited fuel is at the top of the stack, as I'm not sure that it has been properly patched and hotfixed yet, so you can put unlimited fuel anywhere else in the stack and have it actually work. So if you move it all the way up to number 1 by just clicking on wherever unlimited fuel is in the stack and then pressing the up button until it gets to the top, that will take care of that for you. And then last but not least, just in case you missed it there, Mander, make sure that the radio frequency is dialed in on whatever radio channel you want.
Yep, I had that one.
Perfect. And you give it a skin. There's a couple options for the E3 by default, the USAF Standard and NATO. It's going pretty well, Smoky Snail. Welcome to the channel. All right, so we're almost done with this little simple mission, and we're going to go change the date, time, and weather. So we're going to go and click on the cloud icon here, top left underneath Miss, where you can have a lot of your mission options and your trigger gateways and things like that. We'll click on the cloud, and we're going to add just a little bit of wind, not a lot. We're going to be taking off from runway 33. That's kind of the direction of traffic that we want from Gudata. So what we're going to do is go ahead and set the wind to blow towards the direction and the opposite end of the runway, which is 150. That way we are flying into the wind and can take off with the wind blowing faster underneath our wings. Not going to make it anything severe though, we're going to call it just 2 knots. And we'll leave it as 4 knots at 26,000 and 6,600 feet, blowing in the same direction. It's important to note when you're changing the weather, the first 2 options, which is at 33 feet, and all of these are from sea level. This is not AGL, it's not above ground level altitude, it is all from sea level. So if you're playing on a mission like Syria or Nevada or a lot of those other places out there that have terrain that starts at 4,000 or 5,000 feet, depending upon where you are, these first 2 options are so far below it, they don't matter. Like it's only gonna catch you here at this this upper altitude band. Hello, Nilana. Welcome to the stream. A little bit of mission editor type work. So we got just a minor wind, not very much, which is important too because when we come down here to make our attack, it's going to be blowing this way. So I'm actually going to grab the Viggen's attack waypoint and just go ahead and preemptively move it roughly in the same direction. So that way, you know, as the BK-90s come down, they will sprinkle out and parachute down into the right spot. You can also change the time of day if you want, and the year, and the month. You do get phases of the moon, so you know if you wanted to come by and I'm just doing this as hypothetical, I'm going to leave it on 21st of June 2016. But if, for example, I wanted to go all the way back to the 17th of January 1991, for which things and events happened, we can see that it was a new moon. Completely pitch black, which will change how the lighting helps you or hurts you in a given mission. If you back the time up far enough too, it will turn off some features like GPS and whatnot because they just flat didn't exist. But we're going to go ahead and set this back to June where it was before. Oh, good lord. Welcome, raiding party. Well, you picked a decent time for that because getting ready to play test this little mission that we've made for folks. But you can change the time of day here. The other important thing to note when you change the time of day is that any of the other spawns and things that you have that have, for example, differing start times, like I could come down here to this F-16 and put in here like 8:30 a.m. for its start time. Well, if the mission starts at 8, it will run for half an hour before that aircraft spawns and then starts doing whatever it is it's supposed to do. If you change the mission start time, it will automatically adjust all of those times if you've made any differences in those sorts of things for you. So you don't have to go back and like retune everything to try and make it work. Nice little quality of life feature. Now the next thing we're going to do is come down to the mission options. And this is what you can use to turn on and off things like, what do you see on the F10 map when you pull up the F10 map? Can players decide whether or not they're using unlimited fuel, immortality, unlimited weapons, easy communication, whole 9 yards? So I like to come through here and enforce a bunch of things, especially when I'm making, you know, campaign missions and whatnot for the group, or you know, specific sorts of difficult missions for a larger audience, anything along those lines. And you do that by telling it what it is going to enforce. This whole column here on the left is you are telling the server, or the mission file rather, what things you are going to take control of. And then on the right is what value are you going to assign to them. Generally, I'll come down through and I'll turn off crash recovery. I'll leave on external views because people, you know, like getting good screenshots, and that's really the only way to kind of go about that. I'll set this to allies only so that you can only see blue 4 type units on the map. You could set it to fog of war, in which case anything that can be detected will show up. You can also set it to just your own aircraft and nobody else's. You can also set it to show me nothing except for the map. Especially if you're wanting to do a little more hardcore type navigation type stuff, that would be the option to go to. You can set whether or not labels are present. I usually set it to off. mostly because those seem to be a little bit of a crutch. But it's good for new players when you're starting out, especially if you're trying to find your eyes, that kind of deal. Turn off simplified flight model, immortality, weapons, fuel. I've got an ad coming up. Hopefully I will catch you guys back here in a minute. Usually turn off easy communication. If you leave easy communication on, it will automatically dial your radio in for you. Turn off radio assists. Unrestricted sat nav. Actually turn off padlock. Turn on wake turbulence, simulation level GFX. Turn off random system failures. There's a time and a place for those kinds of things. If this is the kind of mission that you're building for that kind of thing, be my guest, turn it on, do what you're going to do. Usually leave off the mini HUD, the cockpit visual reference mode. F10 markers, though, I go ahead and leave on, especially for some aircraft like the Viggen, where they are almost downright essential. Civilian traffic, you can turn it on or off, really kind of your own preference there. Some missions I turn it off on purpose because it's, late at night or whatever. There's not supposed to be very many people on the road. I might even turn it all the way down to low if I don't want it to go off. Sometimes it's a huge performance hit depending upon the quality of the machine that you're playing DCS on. So, turning on or off the civilian traffic is kind of up to you there. Bird, same sort of deal. Cockpit status bar. Battle damage assessment is one that I tend to leave up when I'm doing training or if I'm learning a new weapon system, just because it will give me feedback as to whether or not I actually hit the target without having to go back and look at it myself. So for the purposes of this mission, as we just crashed into the ad break, I'm going to go ahead and leave that one on for now. Okay. We got ourselves some very basic Kroger brand light roast coffee that we're drinking tonight. It's been going well so far, mixed in some of that Irish cream goodness. I love my coffee. I love my coffee very, very much. All right, so we have a very basic mission right here at our fingertips. Why don't we go ahead and fly it and just see how everything we put here into the server actually flies and appears in, in the game. Commander, you can go ahead and fly this one at your own pace. Oh, sing for me while I've got a raid. I see what you did there, Smoky Snail. I appreciate that. All right, let me get this going and then we'll come up with something to sing. I'm going to save this mission first. Let's go ahead and just get that going. Oh, I don't want to save it over my work in progress Falklands 1992. We'll call this one Stream Building. Go. Now all of our work is nice and saved, so if something bad happens, we'll be okay. And we'll get in there and we'll start the flight forward as we take the Viggen up to go hit our target. And I'm going to go over here and pull up something to honor Smoky Snail's sing for me that they put in there. Adjust my head tracking here real quick. And we'll just go ahead and pause the server while it's loading all the textures and all of that. And we're going to get our song here out of the way. So for Smoky Snail, since we've had some requests for it in the past, we're going to go ahead and put down a couple of verses there for the Marine Corps hymn. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land, and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marine. Here's to health to you and to our corps, which we are proud to serve. In many a strife we fought for life and never lost our nerve. If the Army and the Navy ever look on heaven's scenes, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines. There we go. We did the Air Force hymn some time ago, so we didn't pick that one up there for the Marines this time. All right, let's go ahead and get ourselves started up, shall we? Let's unpause. Got our F-16 and our F-15 doing its thing. Turn our lights on. Ourselves set up here. It's not awful for an Air Force brat. I appreciate it, folks. I do enjoy it. I really do. Alright, so we have our AWACS on 266. We're just going to go ahead and dial our manual radio up, which we can set those channels in advance. We wanted to use channels for it, but I'm just going to use the manual radio here today. Just waiting on the computer to start up. And we got zeros across the board there, so it is now ready for us to plug in our data cartridge. Reflola, input 9099, enter. Let's load the information into our data cartridge. And the information is now loaded, which if we pull up our kneeboard now, we can see here we got our takeoff point at Gudada, we're on the stream building mission, date and time, all that good information, but more important for what we're doing, we've got our waypoints that we put these names on. And it tells us what each one of them is. So we did that in advance. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that our B2 waypoint is actually going to change to M2. Come over here to TACT, input, 9, and we want to make sure that B2 is changed, so B2. We're going to verify that information by going to output on AKT pause and just cycle through our waypoints. Got B1, oh, M2, that's an attack waypoint. We're good to go. 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't have a 7, which is what we want. And we have L1, which is our return to base point. So we're just going to set it back for LS. Make sure that we're good to go there. Since we already know we're going to be doing some BK90 work, we're just going to preemptively set ourselves up for the attack. And let's go ahead and encode our BK90 for a nice wide pattern dispersal. The thing that I've learned about flying the Viggen is that most of the flying of the Viggen happens on the ground before you even get up and start moving through. So the more things that we can set, which I also need to set my QFE. Just going to roll that back to 991.
What was the code again for the...
Oh, for the BK90?
Yeah.
922 is the index you want. And then we want a 30-meter spread on that, so we're going to go with 030. So 92203 and then enter, because the other 0 was already there for you. Dial our brightness down a little bit, turn our radar on, and, you know, as we pick our head up and look around, our jets are getting ready to take off. Take our parking brake off. And normally I would want to take off from this nice convenient little takeoff point here, but since the AI is opting to go this route, and I don't feel like flying into another jet, we're going to go ahead and taxi down this way to the other side.
Dark Star 1-1, passing waypoint 1 at 30,000.
Okay, we know we're on the right AWACS channel because the AWACS is actually talking to us.
At bullseye 303 for 100 at 30,000.
A little quick there, so we use the thrust reverser and the brake to slow ourselves down. And we'll fall in line here behind everybody else. I suppose this would be a nicer takeoff point. If I had thought about it, I probably would have brought the wind the other direction, but there's a big old mountain on the north end of Gudada. Be a little nerve-wracking to try and get around when you're just trying to get off the ground. Okay, so the things that we're watching for, and just to keep in mind for the folks at home and the Raiders that are here watching the game. It's a weird thing to say and not talk about football here in this town, but, you know, it's a good thing. Is we want to make sure that our cap aircraft are going up and doing their job for cap. Our F-16 is going up and doing their job. And when we get done with this one, we take a brief minute to look at TAC view, which I strongly encourage, especially as that's a free program that interfaces not just with DCS, but with Falcon BMS and IL-2. If you do any of those kind of flight sims, I think it might even work with like the Microsoft Flight Sim series. But it does give you all of the telemetry data. So you can kind of see what's going on, but we're going to be using TACView to double check our Red 4 aircraft to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Alright, so it looks like we're last to take off, which is not the worst place to be. Kind of want our seed aircraft to take care of that SA-3 site we put down. Want our cap aircraft to deal with the fighters. Or we show up and drop hot sprinkles all over the area. Hold short here for a moment. Let these big aircraft get themselves up in the air. Let the super tiny aircraft that's a little heavier, as a proportion of its weight at least, get up in the air after them. We'll go ahead and we'll take the active for our turn. Ourselves kind of right here on the numbers. World reference button, a good tap. We're looking good. Let's go and push zone 3. And let go of the brake. Not just a mission editor tutorial here, we're going to get a little bit of a helpful hints and tips there for the AGS-37 VIG, and I'm actually watching that little line extend on the bottom part of the HUD, and as it touches the goalpost there, reach takeoff altitude. Gears coming up, easing off the power. And now we're turning all the way back around waypoint 1. I'll put it in zone 1 afterburner here for a minute. We are a little heavy. And we're going to go and cruise up the coast here a little bit. Pick our HUD glass up here. A lot more power for a minute. And tap my reference again. I want it to be about a 300 meter altitude cruise. Just go and put the AP hold on here for a minute. And through the magic of time compression, okay, so we're looking at about 150 kilometers there, which is 15 Swedish miles, to get to our target. So just to make sure I don't hit a mountain or anything, I'm going to go and put myself up a little higher. And then we'll put the autopilot back on again and use the time compression. It's a VIG and it kind of likes being on the ground or near the ground. But for our purposes today, we just wanted to get in here and see if the things we placed are doing their job. So, you know, we can actually check the F10 map for a little bit. See that our friends are in fact on their way. Advancing this along here. Dark Star is telling us about the presence of enemy aircraft, and since they aren't rushing straight at us to go try and take us out, we know that they're actually doing their job and they're on their patrol. Fuel level here is underneath 100%, so our ET is definitely empty. Go ahead and get rid of it. Cruising right along. Remember, our turn point is somewhere down here. Our friends are flying to their waypoint. The F-16 has dramatically decreased its altitude as it is moving on its way there to attack the target. He's actually getting ready to do what he needs to do. Or at least he's thinking about it. As for us, we're maintaining a pretty good clip here. We're at Mach 0.8. Afterburner stage 1. Kind of something unusual to think about for the Viggen, at least. If you haven't flown the aircraft before or don't understand kind of its little secrets. It's got a very efficient engine in afterburner, at least in stage 1. So you can actually use AB stage 1 to perform a longer distance strike and cruise mission type thing on. It's still going to be more fuel consumptive than military power, you know, so still got to be careful with what you're doing. But you can ride it a little more than other aircraft do. Kind of watching our range indicator to our next waypoint. It's just about 4 Swedish miles, so once it gets down to actually 40 kilometers, it will snap itself back there and change its scale. Boop. Change the scale to regular kilometers rather than Swedish miles, and now it's ticking down. While we're on our cruise, let's go ahead and take a look at MACOP. So we've got external views up, and we're just going to review things we placed. We put down all these T-55s. These are our victims for today. And if we've done things right, and we put the wind in there, or at least if I put the waypoint in the right spot, we should see a good portion of these end up suffering some damage there. And as we look over here, we've got our SAM site that we put down. Got our flat face search radar there with that double header sort of antenna mast. And we got the low blow, which is the actual track radar for guiding the weapons. And we got the launchers themselves, which unlike Top Gun Maverick that used a launcher system that looks very similar to what this one is here, they're not defeated by flares. So our radar guided weapons. We're now 15 kilometers out from our target. And rather than let this go ahead and auto move us over there, I am going to go ahead and set us up for M2, which changes our various dials, buttons, and switches to let us know we need to turn. We're going to go ahead and turn. We are now in for the attack. Got a little bit of terrain to work with, and some pause here real quick so I don't lawn dart myself into the ground. We can see that there are a couple of weapons inbound from the F-16, so he has effectively now done his job. He is performing SEAD to kill that SAM site and its associated radars. That will make it safe for our cap aircraft to do their job, killing their aircraft, while we do our job attacking the runway and the associated tanks that are on it. So far, our knowledge of the tasking system in DCS has been doing what we want it to do. Just gonna go ahead and ride a little bit lower, try and follow the terrain a little bit. We're still broadly heading towards our objective. It's somebody hitting us with a probably a track pulse that we're getting looked through from. Since I've got this big old hill in between me and the waypoint, pretty safe to assume that it's probably the enemy aircraft tracking one of our own fighters. Still looking all right. Gonna put some negative G's on the aircraft here for just a moment as we dive back down. Just making use of the terrain here. Now I know if the people are doing their job, which they are, that we should be largely safe. In fact, there's our F-15s up there, up in the contrails. But I'm going to fly this as if there are other threats down there I don't want to have shoot at me.
Enfield 1-1, Dark Star 1-1, Bra 054 450 at 27,000 knots.
Using the terrain to our advantage there, so if there was any other radars or sensors or systems down there pointing up at us, they would have a hard time seeing us. I'm going to go ahead and pause here again briefly. Go ahead and just double check on that SAM site. We can get in there and we can see that the low blow is very much destroyed. With it out of commission, that SAM site can no longer see us. Well, that's not true. It can see us because the search radar is still up, but it can't guide its weapons to shoot us, so that site is effectively neutralized. Our SEAD flight has done its job. Good job, F-16. Yeah, we're coming up on 40 kilometers to the target area. In a moment now, the Swedish miles icon will change to kilometers.
Enfield 1-1, Dark Star 1-1, Bra.
Okay, that two-tone that we're hearing is definitely the search radar from a MiG-29. Heard that pulse before.
Enfield 1-1, Dark Star 1-1, Bra
It doesn't mean that they're actually locking us, it just means that they are potentially detecting us on the radar. Alright, the rest of this is going to happen fairly quick. Get down to 30 kilometers. Changing master mode to ANF. It's our attack version. I'm going to give it just a little bit of altitude here because I want the glide bombs to have the best possible chance. I'm now in full afterburner, which is going to be a lot more fuel intensive here for us, but I want to give the most speed to the glide weapons as possible. What I'm looking for now is those 2 lines on the bottom to get inside the little goalpost on the outside, which indicates that I should be, as far as the weapons are concerned, in good parameters. Trigger's unsafe. We're looking good, so we're going to go ahead and let him go. There's 2. 2 more. A little bit closer than I would have otherwise liked because those glide bombs have got some more reach. Come off the afterburner, put it in AP hold so we can watch these weapons go in. Up goes the Weasel. And they are all drifting more or less where I wanted them to. Probably could have put it directly over the center. In fact, I think with that whole burst, we really only got the 1 tank. Oh no, we didn't even do that. We hit the runway. That's okay though. It's more of an us issue to fix for later. The wind was a little stronger. That might have got him a little more. Actually, I want B3 to get out of here, or exfil point. Yeah, put it back to nav. Probably could have let those go 15, 20 kilometers out if we're going fast enough. And with the winds as gentle as they were, I probably could have put them directly on top of the target and been okay. But that's not what we were really kind of testing here in the mission editor today. Kind of would have been a nice for the show sort of deal. And I'm not going to fly the whole way back, but I will get at least into the valley here real quick, and then we'll go ahead and double check TAC view. This should be the start of our little run back. The other chirps that you're hearing are different surge pulses from other aircraft. The Viggen, for its RWR, makes use of alternating sounds and pitches at different frequencies to tell you what's looking at you. Rather than having the traditional sort of Western RWR, which is, displaying a circular little ring, and it has the approximate positions of those various emitters and identifies what each one of them are and uses, fewer tones to tell you what's happening. Okay, that should be good enough here for now. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it. Go ahead and pull up TAC view. I could have. I just didn't tap the button there for the switch. That particular TAC view file. I want this TAC view. Nope, still the wrong one. Done the same one twice. There we go. Let's go ahead and come over here to the stream and up TAC view and turn off game capture. Again, the things we're looking at for the mission editor's sake, and these are the kinds of things that I look at when I'm trying to build the mission itself, is everybody doing what I told them to do, and are they doing something weird? Then I gotta go back and try and figure out why. But the TAC view interface, gives you an approximation of where everybody is, what's going on, who everybody is. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good information there, which we can cover at a later time. But as you can see, we did our little taxi. It takes off, it's our turn. Zoom out just a little bit, we can see that the AWACS is in fact making its little orbit. Cap folks. Cruising up, and they're starting to do their orbit. And we have the enemy cap, which if we scroll back far enough here, start at their point, they come down to their first waypoint, and they start moving back and forth, doing their thing. Happy as a clam, they're not immediately turning out to engage. Now, the other thing to note here is this F-16, because if we remember, we told the F-16, hey, I want you to go to one waypoint and then go do your thing. Well, he didn't do that. Well, the reason he didn't do that is that he had that seed tasking by default, which again, for this mission, for our purposes, it matters less. But he is following those instructions, which is he takes off and he's following his waypoint until about here, when he reads the search pulse from the flat face. And at that time, because he has just the regular basic seed tasking, he goes, oh, that's an emitter, I gotta go kill it. Let me forget about my waypoint, let me forget about where I'm flying, let me forget all that nonsense, and go do my seed job. We could have gone in and done the exact same thing as we did with the F-15s, with either a search and engage, or just remove the tasking altogether and use the tasking menu to give them just the attack group waypoint, in which case he would have flown all the way to his waypoint 1 and then turned to go fight. But the comparison point here in this one is the F-15s. The F-15s are not immediately going to go off and engage these guys. They are in fact getting to their cap station while the F-16 is going ham. And because these guys are outside of these guys' circle that we placed on the map, as you remember, they don't go fight one another. They're occupying the same space. Now we compare that with these guys, which we did pick up their launch pulse as they shot a radar-guided missile at our F-16 while we were kind of in a straight line from them. So what we were getting was a little bit of bleed through at the time. Missile gets defeated. because it's a semi-active radar homing missile. As soon as the nose of this aircraft turned a little bit too far away, that other missile was dead, no longer being guided by anything. The MRAM comes in and smacks him out of the air. This missile, even though it is flying kind of sort of towards us, harmless. Same with the other one. The F-16 just gets in there and goes ham. But he's got no bombs or anything left, so at this point he probably should be going home. At this stage of the game, he'd gotten into the zone. Let our BK-90s off. Sure they didn't immediately go hit the ground. Yeah, it looks like all 4 went there. We have turned away. These guys go in. Nice little pattern. And the alignment was right, but the wind calculation was wrong when I moved the waypoint. So when we did our attack, it instead went here rather than here. I was kind of hoping that they would drift over the top. But alas, that didn't happen. So instead, we just damaged a couple of vehicles and put a lot of UXOs and other sprinkles there on the runway. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see a bunch of stuff blow up this time. But it also wasn't the reason why we were here. We were looking at the mission editor. But those are the things that I look for when I'm mission building and mission testing. And with that, we'll go ahead and flip on back over to DCS. Close TAC view real quick. DCS is the main thing back up. Exit out of the mission. Back to the editor. See their little circle? These fighters were nowhere close to it. See their little circle, and these guys were within it, but not for very long. So they may not have immediately turned to go search and find them. Or, well, actually, if they were on the wrong end of their orbit too, they might have been outside of their reach. So, you know, if I wanted them to actually get up there and engage the targets, move this a little closer to make up. Want him to actually just do what I told him to do and nothing else. We're going to just take that seed thing out. So it just says attack group. So now the F-16 will fly up, hit his waypoint, and then attack. Which will move his waypoint a little bit too. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and we'll move ours. So we know that works. But those are the big things, the big takeaways here for what we've been doing with the mission editor. And that is tasking matters. It matters for a lot of different things. Just to kind of put an aircraft out here as an example. The intercept tasking does not have any kind of cap associated task with it, because they're designed to go up and kill this particular aircraft. So there's no en route tasks that you can give them. You have to give them an attack group, attack unit, strafe, whatever. So if you leave your AI on intercept, which is the default for the F-14, they'll just cruise up and do nothing. Like, they will defend themselves if they get shot at, but they won't actively go out and hunt other aircraft. They will just fly their waypoints and then go home. Escort, another example. We got them on escort, got a task. There's no en route task for escort. There is, however, an escort task, which only appears if they have the escort tasking. And then you can tell it what group is it escorting, how far away, either behind it or in front of it do you want them to be. A negative number is behind the aircraft or group in question. Positive number is in front of the aircraft or group. What's their elevation offset? Do you want them to be higher altitude than the target they're escorting or lower altitude than the target they're escorting? And at what interval do you want them to stack up with the aircraft? If you want them to be close together in a very tight formation, you want that interval to be practically nearly zero. If you want them to be offset by an amount, you can set the distance there that way, and then you can tell them what they would gauge and how far away do you want them to engage it. Really, the only one that kind of is a little squidgy for escort, just while we're here and we're on the subject, is this whatever target group it's flying, if it goes to the last waypoint, they will break off and go home. And it doesn't matter if the tasking that particular aircraft group that they're escorting is to continue flying a mission. Like if they have an order to go to their first waypoint and start over again, unless you do the same sort of thing with the escort group, they're going to hit that last waypoint with the target that they're supposed to be following and then go home. So I usually assign escort a bunch of times at each waypoint step for the escorting group, just to make sure they stay with them. Fighter sweep, escort's not a valid tasking for them, but you can give them the fighter sweep task, which is I'm going to go much further out than Cap to go try and find something to kill it. Like they will actually kind of sweep through the whole zone left to their own devices, or you can give them the same sort of search and engage in zone tasking. Ground attack. Ground attack is useful for specific targets. For example, if you've got a static object that you want to have blown up, and you want an aircraft to come in and do that, or if you've got a very particular target within a group that you want to get killed, you can use ground or attack ground object for them to carpet bomb a zone, if that's the effect that you're going for. Precision strike, same sort of deal. You can give them the pinpoint strike, which is I want you to attack this specific point. It's not attached to a unit, so if you want it to bomb a unit, you just drag that triangle over the top of the unit that you want killed, and it will do the rest. Runway attack prioritizes runways. Each one of these has specific functions available to it that are not available to other AI taskings. Refueling is another big one. Obviously, you can't have aircraft that aren't tankers perform refueling, but there are options associated with that too. Ground units have different AI options as well. One of the ones that I like to use a lot, this is kind of digging into Pylam's bag of tricks, is for SAM groups in particular, I will give them the interception range option, and I usually change it to about 70%, give or take. I tend to vary it, especially if I've got like a IADS or an integrated air defense system. I will have some of them shoot at maximum range. I'll have some of them shoot at shorter range. And what I'm doing there with that is the same sort of thing that we talked about earlier with the air-to-air fight, where we have the launches missiles at some random interval between max range and no escape. Treating this is the same way here, because if this SAM site, left to its own devices as a default setting, it will try and engage you at maximum range, which is useful if you're trying to keep somebody back and away, and you just don't want them to get any closer, and it's more a deterrent than actually shooting the aircraft down. But if somebody shoots at you from maximum range as a SAM site, the only thing you have to do to avoid it is fly a loop. Just do like a quick 360 turn in level flight at maximum range, and the SAM will bleed off all of its energy and no longer be able to hit you. You're going to have to wait for it to blow up and self-destruct. But if it shoots at you from its maximum range, it can only way it can hit you is if you're flying straight at it, or if you do absolutely nothing to try and defend from it. If I set this interception range down to 60 or 70%, yeah, it does allow the aircraft to get much closer, but it means that the missile still has that much more energy to try and kill you with, and it's a lot more spooky if you have to get in a little closer. So I like to vary my interception ranges, especially when I've got larger sites together, just to make sure that, pilots have to do a little bit more than just fly a circle to get away from the various threats that are there. If their interception range is down to 70%, and the first thing a pilot does when they get launched on is just go, okay, cool, it must be at maximum range. I'm just going to go into a level right-hand turn and do just a quick 360, make it bleed off its energy, bippity-boop, off I go. At 70%, it's more likely he's going to turn back around halfway through that circle and catch the missile in his teeth. So, things you can do. Try and make those a little bit more dangerous by reducing the actual range that they shoot at rather than absolute extreme range. So I think that's where I'm going to go ahead and leave this one here for today. As far as the little mission editor tutorial about why these tasks matter. Just kind of last final thoughts here before we go through our usual exit and closeout. And that is, there's a lot to this mission editor that is available and makes sense and has things that are intuitive. There's a lot to this mission editor that is a lot less so. So we got a lot that we're going to be covering. I think from this point forward, though, because I usually do classic game stream at this time of night. Thanks, Frost. Have a good night. I'm going to be going back to the classic game stream here on Monday night, playing some old DOS-based games and things like that. But what I'm going to be doing is making some time to make recordings to put up as VODs for some of this DCS mission editor stuff and post those to the YouTube channel as well. Hopefully some of those things will be of use to people and help make your missions a little bit tighter. But I believe personally that it is a good thing for every pilot in DCS to know how to do at least basic things with the mission editor. How do I set up a carrier group somewhere to practice takeoffs and landings without necessarily going through a single player mission that somebody else had already built in advance? You know, what can I do to make it more my own so I can get in there and actually vary the time of day, the weather conditions, where I'm flying, how far I gotta fly? Do I want to turn this into something bigger? Because quite literally every campaign mission I have ever built, every large fighter community type process I've ever built has started out this small and this simple with a single set of fighters and a single objective. And when you just slowly add more of those over time, it can really blossom into something big. There is a lot of repetition to it. There's a lot of moving parts that can break, but that's kind of the basics between just last week's that we did and this week's today. If you're following along with it, I encourage you to get into the mission editor, practice with it, play with it yourself, see how things work, and do a little bit of trial and error. There's nothing wrong with getting in and having a mission go completely sideways and then have to try and reverse engineer it to figure out what went wrong and make it that much better for yourself for next time. But having the ability to put the basics together like this means, okay, I can get in here and I can put up an AWACS, I can drop in a couple of fighters to help me out, or I can just, leave it all bare and just put some unarmed and unarmored targets for me to go blow up and practice using weapons upon. You can do that. You can pick an area somewhere and be like, I want to fly through here, I want to go through there, I want to have waypoints that get me from A to B. And even if that's all you do for a super basic thing, that will let you practice on your own, at your own pace. And then when you connect to that larger server with a bunch of other folks on it and everything else, you can be a little more dialed in so that you're not trying to fight the jet while you're trying to fight to learn a new skill set. So that's my big takeaway there for that. I hope that's been enjoyable for folks. So with that, we're going to go ahead and roll into our closing credits here. Again, I like all my followers, all my subscribers. I very much appreciate that. I like the engagement. I like having folks help and participate and be excited and ask questions, and I encourage that all the time throughout everything that I do. As long as it's not backseat driving in the middle of an adventure, it's usually pretty fair game as far as, hey, what's this switch do? What's that do? Why are you doing it this way instead of that way? That kind of deal. I like answering those questions there. Feel free to ask them at any time in chat. So as far as our usual things there, though, if donating with the Twitch thing is not your thing, or if you don't have any Bezos bucks to give and you're not that kind of person or whatever, that's fine. I appreciate that. I understand it. But if you like, you can always donate directly or tip directly with coffee.com at coffee.com/PylamJRMR. I like drinking the coffee. I like having the coffee, so I will actually spend the money from coffee on coffee, which I think is kind of funny in its own right, but that's the way that works. You can catch this and other VODs on the YouTube channel there, YouTube at PylamRomar. This one should be uploaded either later tonight or tomorrow, depending upon when I get around to actually getting that up there. And as far as our usual week-to-week events, typically Monday I've got 2 streams that I do. I start the first one at 6 p.m. Pacific. Right now I've been hitting Helldivers pretty hard. I might still be continuing on with that as the weeks roll on. After that, I usually do classic games. Change of format a little bit here tonight, mostly for Mander's benefit, as I wanted to help show him how to work with the mission editor, and I understood too that there's a lot of folks out there who might benefit from that knowledge too, so here we are. little bit of educational and entertainment time. But we will be getting back to some classic DOS-based games, some of my older favorites and things like that, starting with next week. Friday night, Arma 3 with Faye and the Hunt, doing Antistasi. It's been a great campaign in Camlonam so far. We're going to press on with that one, especially now that we got these brand new CSAT things to work with. If you like the first-person shooter sort of thing and the adventure there through the jungles of truncated Vietnam, absolutely tune in for that. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Fridays. Saturdays, I typically do DCS and actually do some flight stuff and some teaching and some hanging out and playing with other folks at 9 a.m. However, this weekend I will be at work doing the day job thing, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be on the stream at the usual time for that. I'm still looking to try and stream later on in the day, but that might be like an early evening, 5 or 6 p.m. sort of deal, depending upon how that works out this week. But bright and early next week, first week of May there, we'll be right back at our 9 a.m. start time there for DCS Saturday. So, as always ask for consent, try to communicate as best you can with your partners, try to be genuinely decent human beings, and I will catch up with you folk later on. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope it's been educational and a little bit informative and helpful. And, if it isn't, feel free to let me know that too, and we'll make sure that we streamline things for the folks that you enjoy. Thanks, folks. Have a good night.